I am a mom. I am involved in activism. I'm a New York State certified peer worker. I am an HIV advocate. When I was diagnosed with HIV in 1990, my son was only 10 years old. I chose not to tell him because I felt it would be too traumatizing for him, because at that time HIV was still a death sentence and the stigma was even worse than it is now. I held off telling him, but after 2 years he asked me, because I was always sick and in the hospital, and he saw that I quit my job as a letter carrier. He asked me, "What's wrong with you?" He was crying, and I said, "Okay, now I have to tell him." And that was pretty much, I would say to this day, the hardest thing that I've ever had to do was to tell my son that I had this disease that was most likely going to kill me, and I really didn't know what else to tell him. I just said, I have HIV, and he started asking me questions that I couldn't answer. He was crying. And then because of the stigma, he didn't want other people to know. He did not have HIV, but because of this, he just didn't want his friends to know, because I think he was afraid that if his friends knew, that they wouldn't want to come to the house, they wouldn't want to be his friend. And I totally understood that, and I respected his wishes. And he said, "Please don't tell the teachers, don't tell anybody." But meanwhile now, he's holding this secret in, and he's doing bad in school, he's gaining weight, and this all made me feel really bad, because I felt like this information was traumatizing to him. Now he's waiting for his mom to die, and I couldn't relate to that, because when I was growing up, my mom was always healthy, and I felt like, to this day, it still kind of haunts me, like what he had to go through, what he watched my body go through, the changes of seeing, me have the manifestation of what they called back in the day full-blown AIDS could do to your body. And then on top of that, the last year before I started to get better, I did have cancer, and that was terrible. He was 16 at the time, and he dropped out of school. It just really took a toll on him. So I think, when he saw that I was taking the new medications and starting to do better, I think that was a relief for him. He went back and got his GED, went on with his life, and I always kind of felt like my son was like ashamed of me, but then over the years he's told me that he's proud of me, and I know he loves me, and he's the love of my life. I only have my one son, and he's 38 years old now, and I'm just so grateful that I was able to see him, grow to this age, because there was a time that I didn't think I would see him live to become an adult. And I don't have any grandchildren yet, but that's okay. I'm just grateful that I was able to hang on long enough for the new medications that came out, because I had a lot of friends that weren't able to, and they passed away like a year or two right before the medications came out, the better ones. And I still think about those people all the time. I wish that they could have held on long enough like me, and they were just wasn't meant to be. I don't know. So I kind of think a lot of times that God's keeping me here to do this, what I'm doing here with the HIV Stops With Me campaign. And before this, I've done many other things. I've been in magazine articles. I've done a couple of magazine articles. I'm not ashamed of my HIV status. I tell people, people I meet, a lot of times that I'm living with HIV, just so that they know. And a lot of times, they'll look like, wow, because they don't expect me to say that, especially if they know nothing about me. And they think, and they're like, wow, that's really, it's like they're kind of like impressed with that, that I have the courage to tell them, and that I'm still living this long. And I guess in their minds, maybe they think a person who's been HIV positive should not still be alive. For as long as I've been HIV positive, should not still be alive, but that's not the case. I take my medications, my HIV medication, right all the time, because I don't want to go back to where I was 22 years ago. I'm very careful when it comes to taking my HIV medications. I always take them the right way. I take them every day. I take them between the right time space. I'm very adamant about getting to my doctor's appointments, not just my HIV doctor, but I make sure I go to all my other doctors and stay on top of things. And I think because I am that type of person is one of the reasons why I'm still here. I just, if something doesn't feel right, and I know something's wrong, I don't ignore it. I go to the doctor and I get whatever type of doctor and I get it checked.